we're going to get right into it. So our readers have been waiting for this opportunity to ask you questions, and we have a lot of thoughts, a lot of views, and we're happy to have you here. So let's start off with Donald Trump. How in the world did he win, and how do we get out of this?
Well, I think we have to speak very clearly and succinctly that Donald Trump is a gangster, and that's not a subjective expression, it's an objective condition. If anybody talks about grabbing a woman's parts, that's gangster. Anybody talking about stealing oil from another country, that's gangster. Now, he's not some isolated phenomena. He is as American as cherry pie. That he's a symbol and a symptom of the spiritual blackout in this country, in this empire. And that spiritual blackout means the relative eclipse of integrity, honesty, and decency. So what we have now is not just him, but we have a moment in which, and I talk about this in the new introduction to Race Matters, where you normalize mendacity and you naturalize criminality. That you encourage callousness and you reward indifference. So that it's not just Trump, but it's true for the whole ruling elite in the country, no matter what color they are. It's greed, 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 and the whole culture is more and more about image, spectacle, status, money, and position.
So you've released Race Matters, the 25th anniversary. And we read your introduction.
Well, I appreciate that, too. I appreciate
We got
that.
the introduction, we read it.
Yes,
But just talk about why you think a 25-year-old book is still relevant today.
Well, one is, the book was fundamentally focused on the way in which the vicious legacy of white supremacy contributes to the arrested development of American democracy and reinforces imperial policies around the world. That was 25 years ago. Respond to Brother Rodney King, getting beat down like a dog. 25 years later, getting all these precious young brothers and sisters, disproportionately black and brown, getting shot down like a dog. That the white supremacy is intensifying, but white supremacy must never be viewed as an isolated phenomenon. I tried to make that point 25 years ago, and I really made the point in the introduction. Because white supremacy is always connected to an empire.
Right.
It's always connected to patriarchy and homophobia and transphobia. And it's also connected to resistance. There's no such thing as white supremacy without resistance to white supremacy. White supremacy has never existed 1 second without somebody fighting against it. So that the fight back's got to be constitutive of any discourse about it. The problem is a lot of times in our academic life and in our journalistic life, you have writers who will talk about how bad white supremacy is and not talk about the fight back. Or in the old black church language, that white supremacy is mighty, but it's not almighty.
Okay.
You see, it's a lie, but it is alive.
Right.
But one of the reasons why it's not almighty is because there's always a cloud of witnesses who's willing to fight it down. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells Barnett, James Baldwin, Donna Hathaway, Nina Simone, Aretha Franklin. You go on, that rich tradition that's fighting against it. Spiritually, it's not just political. It's first and foremost a spiritual issue. Because when you're taught to hate yourself, if you don't get your soul intact, you're always going to be behind because you're going to be calling yourself into question. You're going to be hating yourself, demeaning yourself, devaluing yourself. You have to have self-respect. You've got to have self-worth. And that's a spiritual issue. And that's a fight back against white supremacy as well.
So in the new introduction, you noted that our last and only hope is this prophetic fight back.
Oh, yeah.
And when you say our, I assume you mean black people.
Well, I mean black folk in terms of starting with black people. You got to start on the chocolate side of town, always. But if you're a love warrior, the love spills over.
That's right.
It goes to indigenous peoples, Latinos, it goes to the Asians, it goes to white brothers and sisters, it goes to Jews, it goes to Catholics. But the problem is, the worst thing you want is black people who love everybody but black people.
Right.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about being a big supporter of Senator Bernie Sanders last year. And I wanted to go into, some of the issues about why he didn't win, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like supporters make a mistake by not supporting him, especially black ones, because that was one of the challenges that he had and something that I reported when I was on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. No, the thing is that I think black folk always should have a suspicion of any politician, no matter what color. So Bernie Sanders showed up. He's a vanilla brother. Most black folk ain't never heard of him because he's just not that popular. He's coming out of a vanilla state of Vermont. He wasn't tied to black freedom struggles in the 90s and early part of 21st century. In the 60s, he was strong with Martin and Snick and Stokely Carmichael, some of the great. Many of them heard him, and he hit Wall Street so hard because that was his main issue. And you can't talk about black freedom without talking about redistribution of wealth downward. So he was hitting the right thing, but it was not, that's never the only thing. I mean, racism and white supremacy cuts more than just redistribution downward. But he hit that issue, and black folk began to listen and say, dang, he's on to something. But the other side is the neoliberal network coming from the Clintons. You got black churches, you got black radio folk, you got black professors, you got black pundits. Their careers tied into this next job, you see. And that careerism and that opportunism is strong. I mean, and we were on the road with Bernie, and I talked to a lot of these black elected officials. Oh, Brother West, man, we appreciate what you saying. You telling the truth, but we already invested. We got this position for us. We got cash flow, so forth and so on. I said, well, I understand, but I said, well, Lord, if you're going to be unprincipled, just be honest about it. Don't rationalize and say, lo and behold, Hillary Clinton's on the cutting edge. She called our young black folks super predators. That's the most dehumanizing language that we heard in the 1990s. She was using it explicitly to help justify the new Jim Crow that the great Michelle Alexander has taught us about alongside Angela Davis and Glenn Loury and the others. So that you had the black neoliberal network tight, and they had money flowing, positions dangling, the carrots there, and folks just grabbing. That's why the issue of sellout is so very important.
That is a neoliberal. A lot of us have heard that word, but we don't know exactly what it is.
Well, neoliberal is somebody of any color who sees a social problem and does three things: privatize, financialize, and militarize. You got a problem in the schools. Privatize the schools, push back public education, bring in the financiers, the profiteers, make money on the tests, make money on the teachers while you push out the teachers' unions, and then you militarize the schools. You bring in security. So we got precious young brothers and sisters in the hoods going to schools like you and I going to the airports. See, that's the militarization of the schools. Police the same way. Outsource, militarize, right across the board. So that a neoliberal is somebody who is obsessed with markets. That's what privatizing is about.
We only know this current neoliberal system, right?
That's true.
And we operate under capitalism. And people don't know another way. So how do we move ourselves out of that into something better?
Well, one is you can always opt for integrity, honesty, and decency in terms of trying to tell the truth. You just have to be willing to pay a major cost.
Right.
See, we live in a system now where those who opt for compassion are losers. You see, those who opt for helping others are pushed to the margins because everybody's about getting over. Or the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. Because it's a gangster mentality across the board. So you say, for example, our grandparents told us that we want you to be great. We don't want you to just be successful. We don't want you to walk around here with a whole lot of money, living in no vanilla suburb with some trophy spouse. If your soul is empty, you better get your soul intact.
People consider you to be an Obama hater.
Yeah.
Right? People, and that's the word that we keep on hearing. You're a hater, and that there's something vicious that you have against him. So I just want to ask you about your response to that.
No, and I appreciate that. Because, see, part of the problem is, you see, we got a market-driven public sphere in which if you criticize somebody, it's a takedown. If you interrogate somebody, it's a form of hatred rather than a subject matter, you see. So you can have deep disagreements with a lot of different kind of folk, you see. Minister Louis Farrakhan is somebody I have great love for. I don't agree with everything that he's putting forward. We fight it out. I spend time with Brother Malik, Zulu Shabazz. I don't agree with everything he does. We fight it out. But there's a subject matter, there's a truth bigger than us. Well, with Obama, He was such a significant figure. He's an icon. He's a symbol. He's brilliant. He's charismatic. He's somebody people are going to want to imitate and emulate. And you have to say, well, wait a minute. From the lens of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer, where is he to be affirmed and where is he to be criticized? The affirmation is, in his brilliance, he had to do a lot of homework. That's discipline. That's very important.
That's right.
To be successful, he had to have judgment. That's significant. But the question will then be, what do you use it for? You see, do you get into office? Do you side with Wall Street? Do you side with Main Street? If you get into office, do you hit the new Jim Crow head on, or do you wait for 7 months? When you get in, do you have drone strikes? What Bush had 45, he had 560. I called George Bush a war criminal. He was a war criminal because I believe drone strikes are a crime against humanity. I don't care what color they are. Now, if he do 45 and he's a war criminal, what does that make Brother Barack Obama? Of it. Now, I defend Barack Obama against white supremacists, Fox News, people who lie on him. He's a Muslim. No, the brother's a Christian. Well, he is a neoliberal moderate who done some decent things, but like most neoliberals and moderates, they're afraid to hit white supremacy head on. He didn't do it.